Got the lift. Lift in. Opened it already once and had a problem with the memory card in the camera here. I got some bolts, nuts and bolts. A-arms. They are beefy. Oh, sorry, that's a spindle. Not an A-arm. There's A-arm. A-arm. Rear shackle or perch. Lift block. And U-bolts. This thing is beefy though. I guess I don't care too much for the standard. Probably grade. Is that grade 5? Yeah, they'll rust. Hardware isn't the best. It's all cheap. It'll rust out. Live up here in New York. Use this in the snow at all. Which, if you're lifting and putting tires and a lift kit on a golf cart, you're probably going to use it in the snow. It is pretty nice though. Urethane bushings, it looks like, are definitely not regular rubber. They're hard. Those shock extenders. Another A-arm. There it is. SGC all-terrain. Even came with Loctite thread sealant. That's pretty cool. Hopefully it'll be pretty straightforward install. It just should be. It's just basically a whole subframe bolts to the frame in the front. Not bad. Alright, today is the day. Go and get the golf cart. Alright, golf cart. Well, first things first. Shock the wheels. Jack her up. So we'll just tackle the front first. So I'm using impact tools, power tools, but you could do this with just hand tools. Obviously you'd probably want to break these loose with a tire on the ground first with a breaker bar, but in terms of power tools, okay, so after we got the wheels off, probably retain the lug nuts right on the spindles. Makes it easier. Gotta knock off this dust cover. There you go. Oh, that's off. You see there's a nut under here. A pair of needle nose pliers. Remove the cotter pin first. Just hook it and pull it right out. And this should be easy to come out because tightening this nut tighter and tighter, you're setting the bearing preload too tight And the bearing's going to get really tight, not want to spin. Tighten it up. See, it's all stiff now. Back it off. Spins great, but it's loose. Just like that. So that's where the dust seal was riding. We'll keep all this in one piece, along with this. Then we do the other side. So next, we're going to take off the tie rod off the steering. And kind of zoom in on it here. So there's a castle nut. There's a castle nut with another cotter pin. Doesn't want to come out, which that's always great. But we have a fix for that. It's called a bigger hammer. And really shouldn't beat on it anyway. You could use a pickle fork like so, wedge that in there and beat on it. But you use a pickle fork, it destroys the boot. But as you can see, the boot's pretty messed up to begin with, so it is what it is. So we'll take these out, these two bolts out. Don't take the actual bolts out. Loosen the nuts on the other side. Loosen the tension on the spring itself, and then we'll be able to take it all out. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and get right back. So I was going to do the other side off camera. Then I realized how bad the bushings were, and it's kind of the big reason for the lift. But use tire as a seat. Here's a pro tip for you. Let me get this camera situated. There you go. Now, I knew the tie rod was shot on this side. Showed that in a previous video. But you can see that pretty clear right there. So next I'm just removing these lights here. Alright, next step, remove the shock. So next is this upper control arm. It has one bolt going through right here. So as you can see now, that actually uncovered our last two bolts of the front suspension. Once we take the other control arm out, take these two bolts out, drop this lower spring, we'll be able to get the new stuff. I'm going to clean up and degrease everything kind of off the camera, but yeah, that is just greasy and nasty. Alright, so the upper control arm is gone. Now it's just 4 bolts. So, I should have read the instructions. These 4 bolts, you're supposed to keep them. Oh, FedEx guy's here. Alright, let's do some unboxing. Tires showed up today. Right in the middle of making a video, actually. If I knew how to use the dang camera. Not bad. Pretty meaty tread. Let's see if we can roll it under here. There we go. Alright, let's get back to There's our bolts. Let's go get that lift kit. A little bit of anti-seize. Keep the threads in good shape in case I ever want to remove this lift. Alright, we got the lift kit. Some anti-seize on our bolts. So the next step is the upper A-arm. Alright, so the next step is to put these basically Heim joints . Alright, so you may have noticed I put this on backwards. Had to swap them around. Bracket faces up for the shock mount. So this is the spindle for this side. That's the next step. And you might need a special socket for this. It's a hex drive socket. Alright, well that side's on. This is the steering. Alright, instead of messing around with this castle nut on camera, I did it off camera. Sometimes they can be a little bit of a pain, and this one definitely was. But what you want to do is line up the castle nut with the hole in the stud, and then just push the pin through, fold one up, fold one over, and there you go. So next is hooking up the factory shock. now that I cleaned up the old links, they look a little bit better. I'll fish that in there. All the way to the other side, which we're gonna have to adjust this anyway. Pull it over, and that's how it's supposed to go. Dust cover. I'll go to the other side quick. Dust cover in. I might have to drill these holes out, which they did say that in the directions, that these holes might have to be enlarged. We'll be back in a jiffy. So one modification, it did state that some carts had to be drilled out to a 1/2-inch drill bit. That's what I got here, 1/2-inch drill bit. Alright, now that that's drilled, grab our tie rod, or drag link. Okay, so the last step in all this, putting this hub back on, jack it up, put tires on. Oh yeah. Okay, so as you can see, put the bumper and the lights back on. All good there. Yep. So, turn her around. So we got the back turned around, jacked up. A lot of jack stands because it is kind of rear heavy. Still got the jack under it just to help support it, but it is sitting on the stands. So what we're taking off here is the rear shock. These bolts right here, these two shackles. So now we've got those shackles out. And we have to, I've lowered the engine frame a little bit with a jack. So now what we have to do is basically take these leaf springs out momentarily and then revert them over top of the axle and lower this down. Alright, a keen eye would have noticed the jack stands, because I needed something to hold the axle while I lower the whole assembly. So now both springs are out. Lower this whole assembly down. So that's what we're looking for there. It's going to slip on like that, the other way. Sits just like that. I'm going to use one big U-bolt, and it goes back in like so. So there's basically where you're getting your lift. There's big blocks, and this bracket here, which has a hole here, that's for your shock. Slips over like that, and then the big shackle goes over top of everything. The spring has a centering nut. That's to center it on the perch. So because we removed the spring, we have to place another centering bracket, and that's what this is, underneath the spring perch and the lower control arm. Any results to the election yet?
No.
That's crazy.
Oops.
4 years ago, I remember we had the results to the election that night. Alright, so I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side. Alright, so we put our bolts back in. Front hanger. I bent the bracket slightly out, so it should slip over. Get that to work. Washer, lock nut. Grab a 3/4, tighten that up, and I'll throw the wheels and tires on because we're basically done. Well, here she is. It's the next day. Definitely took a lot longer than I expected, but never really worked and recorded at the same time. Really don't like the position of the muffler. It's hanging really low. Gonna have to lift that up, re-weld something going on there. But it's pretty sweet. Looks really heavy duty. So that concludes this video, and I did end up getting a headlight kit, so that'll be the next video. Let me know what you guys think.